Who are the richest mixed martial artists of all time? What is the top 10? Well, you can probably guess number one, Conor McGregor. We all know that. He doesn't hide it. He's very brash about it. The man's loaded. He's flying around the world on private jets. He's sailing across the waters on Lamborghini yachts. He's wearing hundreds of thousands of dollars of jewelry everywhere he goes. So that's no surprise. But let me tell you, he's not the only one. There's a lot of people out there that have done very well, that have made a lot of money. And today, the Sun newspaper, yes, I know it's a tabloid, but still it's interesting. They've given us a list of the top 10 wealthiest fighters of all time, mixed martial artists, mind you. So let's go through the list. Number 10. Randy, the natural Couture. I mean, this guy is an old school legend. Some would argue that he should be on the Mount Rushmore of MMA. He was a 2 weight division champion in the UFC. Had some legendary fights, of course. Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Vitor Belfort, beat all the legends back in the day and actually combined in heavyweight and light heavyweight. And when you hear this, it's not a surprise that he has a net worth of $13.6 million. He had 16 UFC title bouts. So let me tell you, Randy, congrats. I mean, listen, we've got to be honest. These numbers are probably not accurate. It's the Sun, but still, there's somewhere in the ballpark. So he deserves that money. 16 title fights. That's incredible. Number 9, Vanderlei, the Silva murderer, with a net worth of £14.4 million. And that's important to note, by the way. Not dollars, this is pounds, okay? Vanderlei was a legend. Vanderlei in Pride, he was one of the guys that inspired me at the start of my career. He was so ultra violent. I mean, some of the performances, stamping on people's head in Pride, the knockout of Quinton Rampage Jackson. I mean, listen, we all know, when you think of Vanderlei Silva, he's standing there doing this. That's a very intimidating man. I actually had the pleasure of sharing the ring with him in 2010, Sydney, Australia. In my humble opinion, I was robbed on the judges' scorecard. But guess what? He wasn't getting robbed, because now he's retired with a net worth of £14.4 million. Probably a lot of other money coming in through endorsements and things like that as well. So there it is. Another legend of the game doing very well. Number 9, Fedor Emilianenko with a very similar £14.4 million. Now, when I say legend of the game, they don't get much more legendary than Fedor, the last Emperor Emelianenko. Heralded as the greatest heavyweight we've ever seen. It was a shame that number 10 in our list, Fedor and Randy, that they never got to meet up in the UFC or outside of the promotion. But still, it is what it is. Fedor Emelianenko, certainly one of the most recognizable fighters on the planet. In terms of Russian, I mean, he is just regarded so highly. He's almost like royalty. You often see him hanging out with Vladimir Putin. Now, I'm not surprised that he's got a high net worth, because apparently the only reason that he didn't fight in the UFC is because his management wanted a ridiculous deal. And by all accounts, Dana said in interviews many times, they gave him a ridiculous offer.
He has become my obsession, man. You know, he has become my obsession. I want it worse than the fans want it now, believe me.
But that still wasn't good enough. And then his managers, not only the money, they wanted to co-promote the event, which of course the UFC just don't do. So that's why it never happened. That crossover fight, Randy versus Fedor in the UFC, or anyone in the UFC, never came to fruition. But man, what a career. I mean, he was essentially undefeated for a very, very long time. Just always so stoic, no emotion, tremendous skills, heavy hands, great jiu-jitsu. What a guy. Anderson the Spider Silva, the middleweight GOAT. And he made some great bank along the way as well. I'm happy for him. £16 million. Listen, the best middleweight we've ever seen. Now, I know there's a bit of controversy surrounding steroids and things like that, but if we just forget about that for a second and just remember the performances, this man deserves every single pound, okay? Fought all over the world, started his career in Pride, had a few fights in England for Cage Rage, and then, as we know, did very well in the UFC, went on a ridiculous run, and then just got bloody beat off Jake Paul. What are you doing, Anderson? Don't do that again. So listen, the amount of money that is made is rightly so, because Anderson will forever be remembered and enshrined in the UFC Hall of Fame. Some of the knockouts that he delivered were just absolutely insane. The come behind victory against Chael Sonnen when he was losing heavily in round 5 and then pulls out the triangle in the final minute. Just insane. I mean, it's always the excitement what he brought, the flair, the ability, the technicality, the striking, and the humbleness, to be honest, as well. Number 6, the prodigy, BJ Penn, £20.1 million. Listen, BJ Penn, sadly, because as the sport's grown and there's a lot of people that are new fans, okay, and I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way, you're not newbies, but if you weren't around the sport in the inception, in the early days, not the very, very early days, but, you know, the early 2000s, BJ was the man. BJ was a force. BJ was a 2-weight division champion, and he was taking on all comers all over the world. I mean, he fought Lyoto Machida at heavyweight in Japan. The man's a lightweight, for crying out loud. Ended his career at 145 pounds. He would take on everyone. Okay, as I said, he was known as the prodigy because he got his BJJ black belt so quick. And that jiu-jitsu was always on display in many of his fights. But so were the hands. The boxing of BJ Penn was absolutely ridiculous. And 20 million quid, well, you got to think a lot of that came from that absolute blockbuster fight that he had with George St. Pierre, which was actually stopped because Jason Perillo threw in the towel. So BJ Penn doing very, very well. He's got a lot of business ventures outside of the UFC as well. Of course, UFC gyms. He has a couple of them in Hawaii on Hilo. And I do believe that BJ is opening up yet another UFC gym. So well done to BJ. Great to see fighters doing other things, other business ventures outside of the octagon. Number 5, Brock Lesnar, a whopping £20.1 million. Now, that might be what he earned from the UFC. Okay, I guarantee he's got way more than that from the WWE. He's been a huge megastar over there for years. That's why he came over to MMA, brought a large portion of the WWE fans with him, and of course had some massive, massive blockbuster fights. Brock Lesnar, just a huge guy, and became the UFC heavyweight champion of the world on just his 4th ever professional mixed martial arts contest. I mean, that is just insane. Lost his first one to Frank Mir via a knee bar, then he rebounded, he beat Heath Herring via a decision, then he got a title shot against Randy Couture, knocked out Randy, defended against Frank Mir, defended against Shane Carwin, and then he lost to Cain Velasquez in a savage beatdown in the first ever aired fight on Big Fox TV in the States. But what a career. I mean, the man retired 5-3, but he did big things in just 8 fights. Big things for a big man with a big bank balance. Number 4, George St. Pierre with a net worth of £24.1 million.
Are you intoxicated?
I've fought 3 people on this list. Where's my 24 million quid? I'm joking, I did pretty good, but clearly not as good as Mr. George St. Pierre, and rightly so. George, again, just like Anderson, is considered one of the GOATs. And let me tell you, one of the nicest people, but yet one of the most disciplined athletes you'll ever meet. As you see on his Instagram and things like that, if you follow him, the man always stays in shape, still training to this day, even though he's been retired for a long time. And he's always improving as an athlete.
All right, premier shot de l'année. Yeah!
He's always doing cold plunges. He's always running sprints. He's always doing plyometric training. You name it, this man's trying to push himself even further and get better as an athlete, even though he is retired. And that's why. Now listen, he became a 2-weight division champion. Yes, one time he choked me unconscious and took my middleweight title, the prick. And George St. Pierre, without question, is the greatest welterweight of all time. There's no question, and it says here, according to The Sun, before he retired, he was earning just under £5 million per match. And now, of course, he's acting, he's doing movies, you know, he's talking about dinosaurs. He's doing whatever the hell he wants because the man's got 24 million quid in the bank. Well done to you, George. Hope you well, brother. Khabib Nurmagomedov. £30.2 million. Well done to Khabib. You know, there's a quote here. He said, listen, when I came to UFC to fight, I fight top-level fighter and become the undisputed, undefeated champion. This is my goal. This is my goal. Not the money. The goal wasn't the money. The goal was to be the best. But by being the best, he earns an absolute fortune, and fair play to him. For a lot of people, he's another guy that is in the GOAT conversation, the greatest of all time, and rightly so. Retired at 29-0 when he beat Justin Gaethje, Fight Island Abu Dhabi 2020. 29-0, a sensational career with some sensational victories, including, as I said, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and of course, Conor McGregor. But 30 million quid, that's going to go a long way in Dagestan. Enjoy, my brother. But this is
number 1 bullshit.
Number 2. Rorion Gracie with a huge £40.2 million. And now, I know when you hear the name Gracie, you immediately think, oh, right, here's a jiu-jitsu guy. Rorion Gracie, though, was one of the founders of the UFC and has often been credited as being one of the pioneers of the sport. Of course, a Brazilian American who's also a jiu-jitsu grandmaster and is one of the few people in the world to hold a 9th degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And listen, not content with that, the 71-year-old is also a producer, a lecturer and a lawyer. So a very, very smart man and a very, very wealthy man. So with all of that combined, it is no surprise that Rorion Gracie, and yes, I'm not as familiar with him as everyone else, so this one will be a bit short, but Rorion Gracie, 40 million quid, fair play to you, sir. Now we get to number one, we get to the man, we get to Conor McGregor, and we know, there's no surprise here. We knew he was going to be number one.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfucker.
Says here that he's got a net worth of £88.5 million. Now, Conor McGregor would be embarrassed at that, but there's certainly nothing embarrassing. You know, he talks about being a billionaire and being a billion, doing the Billy strut and everything. Hey, if 88 million quid's accurate, that's great. If it's not, who cares? It's enough. But listen, he deserves it. He deserves every single penny. Good for him. He said he wasn't here to take part.
We're here to take over.
But he did. He did take over the sport. The man is such a cultural icon, you know. His fights do insane numbers. There's still incredible desire to see him fight. And of course, that fight with Floyd Mayweather was the second highest grossing fight of all time. Of all time. Only Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather did more pay-per-view buys than that fight. So that's just an incredible achievement. Always selling out arenas, always setting box office pay-per-view records with the UFC. People love to watch this man fight. As we know, he's making a lot of money outside the octagon as well. He's got the whiskey, he's got all of his endorsements, you know, and God knows what else. So there it is. We knew that already, though. The richest mixed martial artist of all time is Conor McGregor. That is not breaking news. But I thought it was quite interesting to read all of those numbers that the Sun newspaper put up there. And I will say again, it's the Sun. But you know what I mean? They're probably somewhere in the neighborhood. They're probably not 100% accurate because these things never are. I mean, how the hell do they know? But there is a way of formulating this and, you know, probably make an estimated guess. And I would say that that's what these are. But if they are somewhere accurate, it's pretty interesting. But there it is. There is the top 10 richest mixed martial artists of all time. Anyway, with that said, I better get back to work. Bye-bye.